Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of copycats out there. There's been so many through the years, but I was actually the first person to take the device out into the field. Frank Sumption actually contacted me back in the early 2000s and told me he had this device, and I thought he had lost his mind. I didn't think there was any possibility it could be real. And we got the device and eventually did take it out into the field about a year later and realized that we actually were able to have that two-way communication. And I guess we're actually, my father and I are the ones that named it Frank's Box, for lack of a better term. We just kind of, we had nothing else to call it, so it's Frank's Box. So if you hear about a Frank's Box, I guess you can kind of thank us for that one.
Oh, nice. Accept no imitations, folks. Order the original Ghost Box right here.
There you go.
Well, it is fascinating because I've been at this about 20 years now, and my mentor, the late Lou Gentili, was an expert with EVP. And it just seems like the Ghost Box, I mean, aside from, yes, The Telephone of the Dead by Thomas Edison, it's always struck me as kind of an outgrowth of the EVP phenomenon.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's actually the reverse when you really think about it, because Edison started working on the device when, everything, when we're talking about radio in its earliest stages, that's what was happening. And that's what he was basing his premise on, is that you'd be able to use these radio waves. And then, of course, the history of it is Rada started getting the voices coming through where radio was limited. So EVP and the recording of EVP actually stemmed from Edison.
True, I guess they didn't have recorders early on, so.
Exactly.
I wonder, though, since this is Edison we're talking about, was it his idea? Or was it one of his interns and he just takes credit for it?
No, it's a pretty interesting story when it comes down to it. Not a lot of people know about it if you go way back, because Edison, the whole story back behind it's pretty intriguing. But there's this unknown fact that recently came to light to me, actually. But when Edison was very young, he actually brought home a note from school to his mother and handed the note to his mother, and she read it, put it away, and said, "Mom, what did the note say?" And essentially she said, "Oh, it says that you're too smart for the school that you're going to. I'm going to go ahead and homeschool you." So, of course, he went on to do all the amazing things that he did, controversial, but all the amazing things that he did. And she was always a very strong spiritualist, and he always had the scientific mind. So when she died, they were very close, and he took it hard, and he was going through her effects when she passed away. And he actually stumbled upon that letter that he brought home all those years before, opened up the letter, and essentially what the letter said was, Thomas Edison is too stupid to go to the school here. You're going to have to homeschool him. So
I've heard that story,
Yeah. Actually, the version I remember is that he asked too many questions and take the teachers off.
That could be.
Exactly.
And that would probably be it. It's like, can't you just accept this answer and make my life easier? Why are you making my job harder?
Well, and also a lot of creative and original thinkers in that early kind of school system didn't do terribly well if your mind didn't work.
That was generous. The early school system, I think it's still a problem.
Well, yeah, but at least now some of it is known, like other disorders, things like that, where somebody who was dyslexic back then would have just been dismissed as an idiot and given up on. So
and that was kind of the point back behind it was that when he made the realization that his mother had withheld this information deliberately and how it would have affected him, that's where he made the decision to re-examine her views on the afterlife. And, basically that's where he decided, obviously energy can either be created or destroyed. It can only change form. We being energy, it had to go somewhere. He thought he could build a device that not only brought through those voices, but the actual personalities of people on the other side. And he actually had a measurement for spirit energy called life units. And he believed that he could actually bring through these personalities. So he started work on the project. He talked about it in Scientific American. He talked about it in Forbes. He put it out there. I mean, it wasn't some hidden project that he was working on. He kept really meticulous notes on what he was doing. Of course, all his contemporaries in the scientific community were, just blown away. They thought, "Oh my God, we can't let this get out there." So when he died, they didn't find any machine. They didn't find blueprints, and all of the notes that he kept that were extremely meticulous were all torn out of his journals and destroyed at that point. So, it was trying to be withheld. But the thing was, mediums throughout the years kept coming back and saying, "Hey, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but Thomas Edison keeps coming through to me and telling me I need to build this machine, but I have no idea how to do it." And that's eventually what led to Frank. You know, he was a shortwave radio buff, and he liked to build electronics at home. And that's when he actually kind of stumbled upon how to build the machine through shortwave radio EVP.
See, I've heard a couple of origin stories and how the things work. Yours is by far seems to be the best research. I'd also heard connections with certain recorders, a certain recorder that Sony used to produce. That basically there's a audio recording Sony used to make that tuned into a weird radio frequency and seemed to allow almost perfect spirit to spirit, to spirit communication.
Mm-hmm.
And people suggesting that might have been part of where they got this ghost box from.
Yeah, which I'm curious is that you keep drawing a distinction by saying that not only their voices but their personality. Hey, what do you exactly mean by that?
Well, when you're doing sessions, whether you're doing paranormal research and you're just attempting to communicate with spirit on the other side to find out exactly what took place during a crime, or if you're trying to speak to them about what it's like where they are, things along those lines, that's one aspect of it. You're just reaching out to a random spirit and trying to collect information. But when I do private sessions for people, when I actually sit down and do a one-on-one session with somebody, they're able to hear their loved one's voice, personality, laughter, mannerisms actually come through the machine. They're actually able to record those things that come through. So it's the actual energy of that person on the other side.
Okay, so I mean, like EVP again. I'm going to probably go to EVP a lot because it's what I have the most experience with. But you're usually getting a voice and an answer instead of actually having. It's not too often you get a recorder and you have to sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation with the guy who died in your apartment, as it were. Whereas here you're actually talking about that full communication.
Yeah, and then that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize, the box itself is really just a medium's tool, like anything else, whether it's cards or pendulums or 1,000 rounds, whatever the case might be. This is just a much more advanced version of that. The easiest way to explain it, the most rudimentary way to explain it, is like plugging a guitar amplifier into my head, and you're actually able to hear what I hear. So as opposed to going to a medium where you sit down and they tell you, oh, your grandfather's there and he's saying he loves you and this, that, and the other thing. That's great. I mean, that's something that I can do. But when you're actually able to hear his voice and life come through the machine and talk to you, that's really what it's all about. That's where you have that true two-way spirit communication.
Yeah, I would imagine that'd be a much more effective and meaningful
and mind
kind of encounter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the craziest thing is that when you lose somebody on this side, you don't really you think that's the last time you're going to see him. You have that loss. That's I'm never going to hear that voice again. And it's so monumental. I can't even put it into words. It's so monumental when people hear that voice come through the speakers. It's life changing. And it's just an honor to be a part of it. I don't reach out to my loved ones. I don't try to bring through my friends and family who've passed. I kind of live vicariously through everybody else who does the sessions. So it's incredible to just be a part of it.
I can imagine. I mean, having with your experiences, I know, and other people who do any version of this work know, it's different when you realize that it's different when you're a religious person who believes that this life is not the end, but the experience of being confronted with evidence.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Kind of a certainty that even though they're dead and you're alive, this is not the end of it. You still have that connection.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the most affirming portion of it is that, I get a lot of people, a lot of varieties of people who come to my events. So I do a lot of college lecturing. I do a lot of private events. I do all sorts of different things. And with that, you get kind of a mix of people. You get the hardcore believers who think that every noise and bump and crack is a ghost. It has to be a ghost. It's got to be a ghost. I'm probably one of the most skeptical people in the world, believe it or not.
Good.
I always look for the most logical explanation first.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like, no, calm down. It's okay. Look for the most logical explanation first. Go past that. And then you get the people who are just kind of there to have an experience and see what happens. And then you get those really hardcore. A lot of people want to call them skeptics, but in honesty, what they are is cynics.
Yeah,
They're coming in there
100%.
to debunk you. And I love those people. I love those. Those are my favorite people because they come in there and they've got their arms folded, their legs crossed, the body language is head down. They don't want to be there. They're going to debunk you. And those people, for some reason, whenever they come to my events, are the ones that have the most profound experience. We'll have the ghost box running during a public session, and everybody's asking questions and having experiences. And without them even saying a word, they'll hear, their grandmother call out through the machine, calling out their name. And it's amazing to watch those people's worlds just completely change in front of your eyes. It's pretty incredible.
It is. I've had similar experiences. You take a skeptic into a haunted house, and the minute they see something happen, their idea of what is reality crumbles.
Right.
Sadly, often my experiences with it are not quite so benevolent, but there's definitely some humor. Definitely, even amongst, you have skeptics and you have cynics. I think there is people that consider themselves the skeptical community that still deserve the title of skeptic, not cynic, because it's like, no, they want evidence, they just haven't found it yet. And then you have the people that have, say, I've seen a couple of people who I would agree are the cynics, that if Satan himself appeared in a puff of smoke and tap danced in front of them for 20 minutes, then they have any questions, they'd still insist it didn't happen. Exactly.
And that's a pretty common thing that happens, unfortunately. But, if somebody's open-minded enough to let themselves have an experience, it can be pretty profound. And we've just come so far in paranormal research. I've been doing this. I've literally been a paranormal researcher of some sort since I was 7 years old.
Wow.
And,
you got me beat.
Because I just, I was forced into it because I was having so many experiences in the house that I grew up in that, I had the Polaroid camera and the Radio Shack tape recorder with the silver microphone. And, and this is in the days where you were considered just flat out insane. There was no, cool ghost hunting back then. You were just a lunatic.
How old are you, Chris? I'm curious.
44.
So we're right in the same generation. So your experience growing up with this, except for the fact that I'm not in any way a medium, is very similar to mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question, just to get back quickly to something you said earlier. I'm curious, is there a reason why you don't, knowing that you have this available and stuff, why you choose not to reach out to like friends or loved ones that you've lost?
It's a great question. I don't have a necessary answer for it. I just don't have a desire to do it. And, I feel like the work that I'm doing, the gift that I've been given is meant to be given to other people. I just don't feel like it's almost selfish for me to use it that way. And again, I just generally don't have a desire. I feel like, I'm at peace with the majority of the people that I've lost. And if they want to communicate with me, they will come through. I don't have to reach out.
Oh, okay.
But it is interesting when they do, to hear that voice come through again. I have the same experience that everybody else does. It's still that shock of, oh my God, there they are. But no, I don't actively reach out.
Because I know I'd be out there going after everybody. I'd be calling all kinds of people. I'd be like, eventually the spirit world would just come back and be like, shut the hell up, stop it, just stop it.
It's funny you say that because that's a lot of almost the messages that I've got for that reason.
Oh.
Because, you were chosen for this reason because we know you're not going to abuse it.
Yeah.
But when we first started talking about this device, guys, you got to realize, talking about how old I am and how long I've been doing this. Don't think it's beyond me to think how crazy it sounds. Hey, I've got this magic radio that brings through the voices of the dead. You should check it out. I was a lunatic for a long time. I went from respected EVP researcher to absolute crazy man. It was like that fast. And it took a long time for people to actually kind of come around and see how it worked. Because I go back to I go back to the days of the reel to reel. I go back to the obviously tape recorders. I go back to all that kind of stuff, and sitting in the old abandoned house trying to ask questions. And I think you could probably relate to this. Back in the day, that the whole thing was is that you were either a psychic doing psychic work, or you were a researcher, one of the two, parapsychologist, whatever the case might be. And there was no crossing over. It was what it was. And I remember how many people looked at me completely crazy when I said, hey, why are you sitting in the old abandoned building, the graveyard, holding a recorder, hoping that something comes along? This just doesn't make sense to me. There's too many false positives. There's too many things. You don't have any interaction. This just doesn't make sense. Why don't you interview the spirits? Why don't you ask questions to the spirits? And I mean, every person who was a quote unquote researcher at the time was like, you're crazy. You're trying to do a seance in the middle of a thing about, and they went basically off on me for wanting to do this. So,
which given the history of paranormal research is silly, given it started with the mediums.
You should know, man. Don't cross the streets.
Exactly. Don't cross the streets. Yeah. So
Kevin's a Ghostbusters fan, so that reference never goes old.
See, you grew up in a haunted house. My mentor, the late Lou Gentili, grew up in a haunted house. His mentor, Ed Warren, grew up in the haunted house. I saw the movie Ghostbusters and decided that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
Right. It's crazy how it happens. And in my case, the weird thing about it is that I didn't really choose the profession. So when I was a kid, I was just trying to prove to my skeptic Catholic father that this was real and I wasn't crazy. That was my whole purpose. I want to say, Dad, it's here. And I collected so much great evidence. I wish I still had it. I collected so much great evidence over the years. He debunked everything that I did. He had, oh, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, you're making this up, whatever the case might be. Now he's a believer, but at the time he wasn't. And so I was a musician for years. I toured, I played, I did everything else in the music industry for years and years and years. And I thought, even though I was out on tour ghost hunting, I thought it's a hobby. That's all there's ever going to be to this whole thing. And no matter what I would do, it would always kind of creep up to me and become the forefront of what I did.
Well, does that sound familiar?
So I didn't really choose to become a quote unquote, professional paranormal investigator, professional psychic, whatever you want to call it.
It chose you.
It just, it chose me. I had no option in the whole thing. And, I finally just kind of came to grips with it. I was like, well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's where the universe put me, so here we go. And I think the thing that drives a lot of people nuts, especially paranormal researchers, is they'll say, well, I want to see your evidence. I want you to prove to me that this is real. And I can do that 1,000 times over. I can provide so much evidence that it'll choke a horse. But the fact is that I tell them, I say, I don't have to prove it anymore. I know. I have the reality of what there is. We know what's out there. Now, let's learn from them. Let's figure out what they're trying to tell us. That's the important thing. And I'll tell you what, that drives some of these ghost hunters absolutely nuts. They can't stand the idea of actually trying to gain knowledge from the spirit world. They're still out there trying to, collect the best EVP or collect the best picture or the best video or whatever case might be. I'm so far past that.
It seems kind of short-sighted.
Kindergarten. That's what it feels like. That's kindergarten. We're at this.
It just sounds interesting to me because there's a lot of familiar notes here. I've just gone in a slightly different direction. I know it's there too. It's like I don't need to prove it to myself anymore. I've seen enough crazy things.
Yeah.
Right.
But I have to admit to a degree of envy from your side of things because you get to go and talk to people's lost loved ones and things like that, where I tend to be the spiritual version of pest control.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's calling me because they want to talk with what's in their house. They want what's in their house to go away and not come back.
Yeah. You don't get to deal with like kindly old grandma's ghost that that just wants a last tender moment.
I wish I could say that that's all I've dealt with, but in the paranormal research aspect of things, I've dealt with probably the nastiest of the nasty. And
I don't know.
I'm actually going to ask if you had any that weren't so benevolent.
Oh my God, I can give you literally a million examples of all the things that have happened. I mean, if you want to talk about the Sally House, I was the first person to investigate the Sally House after sightings was there. and was burned and scratched. I was thrown down the stairs. On camera, I was literally lifted by a demonic entity in the Peabody Mansion and almost pushed out of the window. I was choked in the Lizzie Borden house by the spirit of Andrew Borden. In the middle of the night, I left a rope burn around my neck. I can go on and on and on about the negative ones. Dealt with. I do a show for YouTube and Paranormal Warehouse called the Ghostbox Chronicles. And
there we go. You guys
the show
cross pollinate.
I do YouTube. Well, this show started as YouTube actually.
Oh, okay.
And then
yeah,
Gene, our station owner, and I got together, and he offered us the spot. I'm like, okay, I've had enough dealing with the monetization nonsense. Here we go.
Yeah, because I'm sure you know that Google has not been kind to content creators of late.
Oh yeah, absolutely true. 100% true. Yeah, I have my beef with YouTube. Don't get me wrong, believe me. But yeah, the premise of the show, I'm just making a point here. The premise of the show is kind of different than everything else that's out there. Because I did a lot of the paranormal TV. I've been on Paranormal State, Ghost Adventure, and all the different junk that's been out there. And Door to the Dead, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is that nobody ever wants to tell the awful truth. You know, nobody who's ever been associated with these shows is that they're fake. They're terribly, terribly fake.
Yeah.
And to put your name on those things is a bad thing.
It's the truth that everybody knows that people don't want to talk about. Because I think even most believers who love those shows know that 90% of it's fake.
Well, it's like any reality show. Most of it is scripted.
Well, what I find funny is when they actually go into a haunted house and ignore the real stuff to go for their stage stuff because the real stuff is too chaotic.
Well, exactly, and that's the crazy thing about it. I mean, first off, if you ever look up paranormal reality, it's a scripted drama. It's called a docudrama, which means it's a scripted show. So it has to follow a script. It's got to follow lines. Whether that means that the investigators, I put that in quote, the investigators are aware of the faking that's going on, or they're being made to look like fools through trickery. Either way, it's going to happen.
Yeah. This is also why I tend to prefer shows that are specials, because I've been involved in a few of those, and those usually it's a little more legitimate because you don't have to presume. You pick a crazy case and document it. You don't need to go and produce results every week.
Right. Yeah, there are some exceptions. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the way that I see it is that most of these shows are designed to run a certain way and why? Because it's TV, it's Hollywood. You have to produce results. If your show doesn't produce results each week, then
nobody wants to watch a bunch of people sit in the dark asking questions into a recorder and nothing ever happening.
Yeah.
That show will last 3 episodes tops.
Well, if it's a Bigfoot show, it'll go on forever because that's pretty much every Bigfoot show I've ever seen on history, or just it's them running around in the woods going, well, we think we found something, we think we saw something. No. End of the episode. Nope, we got nothing.
Still nothing. Yeah, still no evidence. And you get the producer. You have some producer 10 miles out in the woods banging sticks together.
Yeah,
got Bigfoot. Yeah, that's how that works. So anyway, my point is with this show, the one thing that everybody kept bugging us about was they kept saying, the stuff. Me and my mom, who wrote the book, Ghostbox. They kept saying, you go through these amazing things, you have these things happen, these incredible adventures all the time. Why don't you write a book? I fought them for years and years and years about this because I was just done with that. I was like, I do not want to write a book. No way. Who's going to buy it? And finally, Llewellyn approached us, and we said, okay, we'll give it a shot and put this thing out. But anyway, it ended up on Amazon. Bestseller for 8 days on Amazon, which I still don't understand how that happens, but people seem to be interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was cool. But we decided we'd start this series that we did ourselves. And the difference between what we do and the TV shows do is we literally take the audience along with us. So we go with our cameras and we do Facebook Live while we're doing the investigation. The audience gets to ask questions. They see everything that's happening. They get to hear what's coming through the box through EVP, see the pictures before it ever gets onto the episode. So everything that's produced is 100% real, legitimate. It's not scripted. And I got to tell you, we've put out 6 episodes so far, and I'll leave it to you guys to make your own decision on this, but I think we've collected more evidence in those 6 episodes than all of the TV shows that have ever been created through the paranormal have ever done. And it's all been by strictly going in with an open mind and letting the evidence come to us. The last 2 episodes that we filmed, speaking of violent lines, was at a place called the Stagecoach Inn in Iowa. And first time we went in there, my girlfriend and partner on this actually got scratched several times live on camera. Mm-hmm. And we actually took a team back in after that, along with a class. We actually brought one of our Ghost Hunter University classes with us just to see what would happen and filmed. And almost every individual who came to this event was scratched or burned. And, it's just the stuff that you can't script. It's just the stuff that has to happen naturally. So, I really encourage people to do it their own way and try to avoid the stereotypes.
I have to agree with you, and it's just it's the thing I've noticed, and I think you're saying this as well. It's like if you're open to it, the evidence is there. If you don't want to hear it, it's never going to convince you. I mean, we could sit here and play like the most remarkable EVP show, remarkable ghost photographs, have you do your use the ghost box and do stuff that should blow people out of the wall, blow their minds. But depending on how cynical you are, you can always think of an explanation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like, okay, all of the logical evidence is saying you're wrong, and you're still, a perfect example. I knew a guy once who told me about, while sober, being out on the street late at night and seeing a man standing across the street holding his head in his hands. Right. But the guy swore to me before telling me the story, and immediately after telling me the story, he didn't believe in ghosts. Mm-hmm. It's like, what do I say to that?
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, he's already made up his mind before he can ever give any kind of explanation or anything else. It's ridiculous. There's no way to convince somebody like that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming up on the first half hour, so it's probably a good time to get the phone number out.
Yes.
So if anyone who's listening has some questions for Chris, it's 609-807-2492. That's 609-807-2492. We're always happy to take your questions, comments, concerns. We certainly have more to go. There's plenty more to ask, I think.
Yeah.
Just always good to give the listening audience a chance to chime in.
It's the next member of our paranormal justice league. We've collected a couple. We've got a magician. We've got the ghost boy. We've got sort of Kevin being the Batman who doesn't have any powers. He doesn't have any powers, but if he's prepared, he can do anything. I'm kind of the Robin of the group. I'm there occasionally, but you can be the guy with the ghost box, and
I'll do it.
I'm one of the technical superheroes.
Well, yeah, it's the paranormal superheroes. And
Iron Man.
Yeah, sort of like
because you got the actually really cool piece of equipment that does stuff that blows everybody's mind. So there you go. And Iron Man.
There you go. I like it.
I'm just imagining all of us just walking in and like they did in the Justice League animated opening. Just an opening of that.
There you go.
The paranormal.
Just all of us in these weird costumes. Probably wind up looking more like Mystery Men than the Justice League, but
there you go.
We'll do what we can.
I don't know when, I don't know how, but at this point, it's like at some point I want to get all of the people who are putting this together into it, actually get them all at a convention at the same time.
If we could do a convention, yeah, we should do a photo shoot where we're all in mock superhero costumes.
Big panel of the Justice.
The
Paranormal Justice League.
But for photos, I think we should try to encourage everybody bring some sort of a pseudo superhero costume, and we can all dress up.
Maybe that could be a thing for Dragon Con.
Yeah, there we go.
That'd be an obvious choice.
If you get enough, they would accept it. If you get enough noteworthy people, they would probably do that panel.
Perfect.
We've got an author. We've got
I'm just the schemer. I'm the guy that arranges all this stuff. I don't actually have any superpowers. Technically, as Kevin will tell you, I'm the resident skeptic here. I'm the guy that's never experienced anything paranormal. So my job is to ask the skeptical questions and keep Kevin honest.
There you go.
Well, I don't think you need to keep Kevin honest.
It's still good to have the different perspective.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we know him, but I mean, to the like viewing or listening audience, they're not necessarily, they're sitting there wondering like, okay, why should I believe this guy? Or, you know,
Right.
so I kind of see myself sometimes as the like audience surrogate. I ask the questions that I think somebody watching might want to ask.
There you go.
Chris is absolutely right. He said it. I agree with it. Even when you believe and you've had these experiences, you have to be your own best skeptic.
Yeah.
But it's always good to have the external doubting Thomas, as it were, to get biblical for a minute.
Well, it is that time of year, so sure.
So I have an interesting question. We've talked about it already. So you've definitely had experiences of a demonic nature. Have you ever had something demonic trying to disguise itself and come through as something else?
Oh yeah, many, many times. I think the most prevalent, I use this as the best example. I work with guides. That's the easiest way to put it, spirit guides. Everybody kind of knows what that is. But I actually came up with the term technicians that just came to me. The first time I used the device was these are spirit technicians. They work specifically on this project. And it was interesting because I was actually doing an event in Arizona, in Prescott, Arizona. It was kind of a paracon that we were putting on. And we were doing an investigation of an old hotel in the basement. Got down there, and I kept hearing, we had a large group of people, I kept hearing children's voices screaming for help through the box. And anybody who knows me kind of knows the same thing, is that I'm a sucker for animals and kids. You know, that's one thing that I can't stand, is to see anybody in pain. So I kept hearing these children come through. My technician kept telling me, that's not a child. Those are not children. Stop. It's not children. And I said, no, I'm going to push through. And I usually always listen. This time I didn't. So needless to say, at the end, things got a little bit crazy, and we wrapped up. And I went back upstairs, and I turned the device on in the upstairs area. And I was angry at my technician. I said, why would you let me come through and help those kids? I don't understand what's going on here. And the technician came through and essentially said, do you want to hear who you were really communicating with? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And this terrible growl came through the speakers. And it was enough that the people standing around me had to walk away from the machine, because it was that kind of bone-chilling sound that came
Oh, yeah, I've heard
through.
those growls before.
And yeah, it hit me hard. And then my technician basically said, don't question me, don't question us. I'm on the top of the mountain. I see things that you don't see. You have to trust me. And from that point forward, I said, yep, from now on, I'm going to have to make sure that I listen.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree completely with your guide on that. I know of cases, I've even run into a case or two. There are certain types of demonic entities that really like playing the little kid card.
And I can think of one off the top of my head that's very famous for
the doll.
That evil doll.
We're talking about the doll, Annabelle, again.
Are you surprised?
Yeah. It is by far probably the most famous recent example of this, but there are many, many more. I know of a site in Pennsylvania, my home state, that all sorts of horrible demonic activity. And one of the first signs when things are jumping is you'll hear, not screaming, you'll hear little children laughing just around sunset.
Definitely.
And it's like, there ain't nothing like a little child about that place.
That's right. And they're adamant about it. If you're not careful, you'll get drawn in. You'll get suckered into that. Once you put your energy into that, it's hard to get back out.
So it's probably an obvious question you get asked all the time, but I still think it's worth asking. What's the most interesting experience you've had using the box?
Oh, yeah, that's a $1 million question. I've had so many. I think the one that really always stands out to me, I was doing college. I was lecturing at a college in Nebraska, and it was a Christian college that was there. And
surprised they have you, actually.
Yeah, it's crazy because Catholic schools are bringing me on a consistent basis, and it's always interesting to deal with the religious institutions. But anyway, I did my lecture that night, and I actually took some students out on an investigation. And when you take students out, you again get the skeptics, the believers.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up in a girls' housing, kind of a dorm situation, and doing a session in the middle of the hallway, and had some interesting things that came through. And all of a sudden, through the device, my technician called out a very specific person's name, and this little blonde girl, student, came forward looking shocked. I mean, she's like, "Wait a minute, what?" And everybody said, "They called your name. It was you. They called you." She goes, "I know, I heard." She goes, "I don't even believe in this stuff. This can't be real." And I said, "Well, it's talking to you." So long story short, she sat down, kind of kneeled in front of the device, and started having communication back and forth with what sounded like really small girls, like tiny girls coming to her and talking to her. And she was breaking down and crying and going back and forth, had this experience, and it was really emotional. But what it turned out, we found out just after the fact, was that this girl had actually gotten into an argument years earlier with her two little sisters. And, as brothers and sisters do, they had that back and forth, disagreement. "I hate you," and, "I hope you die," and the mean stuff that kids say.
Yeah.
And she continued to watch TV. The mother took the other two little sisters out to go somewhere in the car. Well, there ended up being a car accident, and the mother survived, but the two little girls were killed. And this poor girl, the student, had lived so long with this guilt of the last words she had said to her little sisters, that it wasn't, she couldn't get past it, obviously. And it was incredible. These two little girls came through and told her that it was okay, and they understood, and that they forgave her for what she had said, and a message to pass along to her mother as well. And I mean, this wasn't just the girl experiencing, which was incredible, but this entire group of probably 40, 50 students that were standing around listening to this back and forth conversation happening. And I think about the eyes that were opened when that took place. So after the session,
yeah, that's not like a cold reading sort of thing where you just leave. That's pretty impressive.
No,
yeah, it was amazing.
That's the spiritual equivalent of touching a hot stove.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the same idea. But we actually, my mother and I, after the event, we actually sat down with her, of course, free of charge. We sat down with her for about 2 hours with her and a reporter from the school, and just let her have a two-way conversation with her little sisters. And we recorded the entire thing. She took that recording. It turned out that she had a family wedding she was going to the very next day.
Oh, wow.
And she took the recording of the little girls to the family. And all of a sudden, I started receiving emails, cards, flowers, letters, all of these sorts of amazing things started coming to my house, because it really gave this the whole family had closure. The mother, everybody, they forgave the mother, they forgave the sister, they forgave everybody. And it was really incredible. So to me, that was the most monumental experience that I think I've ever had. That was incredible. But just to show you the skepticism, the nasty part of it, there was another student who was a part of their school newspaper that picked up on the story and turned it into another story that said that demons were doing this, that it was demons that came through and created so much hate that they called my agent and caused all sorts of issues with my college agent.
That's horrible.
Because they said that Satan had come through and done this. And I tell people that, you get a lot of religious people that say, "Oh, you're just talking to demons. It's a terrible, terrible thing. You're just talking to these evil creatures." And I say, these are the damn nicest demons I've ever met. It's amazing. They get these amazing messages and tell them they're sorry and there's healing, and they tell them they love them, they're with them and watching them. Yeah, that sounds like an evil demonic message.
It's a better class of demons.
So that's actually almost exactly the point I was going to make, because I'm a Christian myself, and everyone in this kind of forgets those people. It's all demons, it's all Satan. It's all,
anything paranormal has to be evil.
It can't be human spirits you're talking to. It's angels, either fallen or holy. And it's like, the Bible says, you know a tree by its fruit. You using this device helped an entire family gain closure. Who in their right mind thinks that's evil?
That's my point. I mean, it's almost mind blowing. It makes no sense.
I'll tell you who in the wrong mind and believes that it's somebody who's completely ignoring that fact for this teeny tiny little thing that you've got to resolve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's that narrow view of the Bible and any sort of
But
spirituality.
the Bible doesn't even say that it's all demonic.
Exactly. No, but half of the people that go around, thumping the Bible
don't know what it says.
haven't read it enough to actually get all of it, because they're always misquoting, or they're always
out of context.
They're cherry picking certain lines and ignoring others.
I always love the example you point out was that the person who got a tattoo of what people think is the
line in Leviticus about homosexuality is evil, and it's specifically homosexuality has been an abomination. But on the same page in most Bibles, Leviticus also says don't get tattoos.
Yep.
Right.
And it's just, and again, I love I'm paranormal pest control, so I've had a few experiences along those lines, but nothing that dramatic. And I have to be honest, there's a degree of jealousy of the fact you get that, I get the woman who committed suicide because she couldn't deal with what was happening in her house. Can we switch jobs here?
There you go.
Not that I really want to, because I feel the same way that I'm doing. Despite the fact I got my interest started with a movie, I'm in this because I'm supposed to be in this. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But there are those days where it's like, can I talk to an angel for once?
There you go.
Which actually is a good lead into a question I had. You were mentioning your spirit guides or spirit technicians. Can you tell a little more about that? Because I'm interested in that. Did they present themselves to you? Did you happen upon them? Are they ghosts of people you knew, or what? How did that all start?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's actually pretty fascinating. I'm trying to think how to lead this thing, because I've had so many developments lately, which are really cool. So the first time I used the device was actually at the Sally House in Ashton, Kansas, and we had basically set up the device in the nursery, and we were getting ready to leave. And as we're getting ready to leave, I'm standing there with my skeptical father, and I was just basically standing there trying to tell the spirits, hey, this guy Frank built this thing, try to talk through it. I was rambling. Realized nobody had ever used it before. And then it's almost like I got this download that hit me, and I just, out of nowhere, said, technicians assist. And we started walking out of the room, and about 10 seconds later, we heard the volume turn all the way up, which was just white noise blaring static behind it. And right behind that, we actually heard a male voice that came through and clearly said, Sally, listen. And right after that, we heard the voice of the little girl that we captured dozens of times on open air EVP come through and start to communicate back and forth with this entity, guide, technician, whatever you want to call him. So that was our first interaction that we had. And I thought, in my mind, I'd always thought that, these guides who, by the way, are very much interdimensional, as to your question, a lot of people think, well, they're people who've lived and died, or they're angels, or they're this and that. Most of the technicians that I've dealt with are either people who have lived and died, or have never existed on a physical plane. They've always been an energy plane in an interdimensional sense. So we deal with these, what a lot of people consider to be extraterrestrial, interdimensional beings on the other side that work on this project.
I don't know, personally, I kind of call it positive extra-dimensional, never walk the world in physical form. I call that an angel.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they go by different names, but they always call themselves technicians. And I've dealt with dozens of years. I've dealt with spirits of people who passed away that have come through and actually led me to their living family. Right now, the lead technician that I work with is actually my girlfriend Garcia's deceased father, Oscar Garcia.
Oh, wow.
And he comes through and has consistent conversations with Dee and the rest of the family on a consistent basis, live on air sometimes, which is amazing. But I always trust my technicians. Like I said, I learned my lesson a long time ago that they know better than I do. And again, what's interesting is that I would really kind of, people who know me know I don't necessarily get too involved with group paranormal and group psychic work anymore, because it's really become a huge competition, which I'm sure you guys have dealt with. It's not about the research of the work anymore. It's about
the politics.
it's the politics and which is the best property, and this is mine, and we all know the drama that goes along with that.
It's idiotic, childish.
Like every other profession.
That's why one of my cardinal rules of the show is unless I know them and have something nice to say, I will not comment on specific groups on the show because I don't want to get involved in that nonsense. If I know somebody, like I've worked with John Zaffis, who's pretty well known, I'll say talk about him because I have nice things to say about the man. I'll talk about Chris versus Caesar, who we had on last week.
Oh yeah,
because I have nice things to say about the guy. After this interview, honestly, I'll have nice things to say about you because you.
Good.
I'll be honest. Whenever I've been I've been in paranormal radio for over 10 years. I've talked to people that say that they have the sort of experiences that you have, taking out the technical side of it, that are very sincere and believable. And I have had talked to people that are completely insane. And the first time I started looking through your book a little, like, I've been lucky with the news show that I haven't had anybody that I thought was nuts so far. And I'm like, whenever I see somebody who has this communication gift like you do, it's like, did I finally hit the nut? And it's like, no, you're actually good. I'm very impressed with what you have to say.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
I do definitely appreciate it.
I'm actually curious what kind of readings you would get from that one in church. I want to say in St. Louis.
Oh,
that one.
If you ever get a chance to go to St. Louis, the chapel at the St. Louis, the university. So back, we had a gentleman on the show, Stephen LaChance.
Yeah.
Who, aside from having had his own experiences with the St. Louis Screaming House, wrote a book about the famous 1940 exorcism of Roland Doe that formed the basis of the movie, The Exorcist.
Wow, interesting.
So
interesting.
The thing that he told me, which is what Amisha brings up, is that on the last day of the exorcism, out of the child who's being exorcised's mouth comes a brand new male commanding voice who identifies itself as the Archangel Michael of the Bible, and says, "This is over. This demon is being cast out," and that's when he's freed. At the same time, across town in the chapel of the St. Louis University, 6 priests saw the Archangel manifest.
Wow!
It'd be very interesting to do a ghost box in there, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would love to do one if they'll let me do it. I've been on the Vatican's top 10 list, so I have to be careful with that.
I'm actually still surprised that nobody talks about that whole thing happening. And like it's not a dedicated site or anything, and it's like, but why isn't it? And that's huge.
Oh yeah, it's gigantic.
I'm curious because you mentioned in the book, if memory serves, having Edison come through. Have you had any other celebrities come through?
Yeah, several. It's interesting because we have a lot of people who come through and they want to, usually when people start doing their sessions, they want to speak to their relatives. That's fairly normal. And then sometimes people will expand into, wanting to speak to their guides. And I've had several people who've actually come back and said, well, now I want to try to talk to a celebrity on the other side. And I'm like, I can't guarantee that we're going to bring anybody through.
Doesn't mean I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Exactly. I have had some really interesting experiences with people who would be considered celebrities that have come through. I've had John Lennon come through.
Oh, wow.
I've had Marilyn Monroe come through in her actual voice, not the Hollywood, sex
one
bomb.
in the movies.
Oh, wow. The Norma Jean voice.
Yeah, she came through and she was very normal. She talked about what happened to her. I mean, in the book, we talk about, we literally stood on the grassy knoll and talked to JFK and Jackie Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
Who came through and gave us information about the assassination, why it happened, and who did it. And
that's got to be that's a must.
Makes me think of one of our previous guests who did a story about the ghost of JFK constantly coming back, but the truth had never come out about the assassination. Fictional story, but it's just an interesting connection.
And Kevin can use his famous line from Ghostbusters. How is Elvis? And have you talked to him lately?
Yeah, that question was coming.
Well, because we have a guest coming later that's wrote what, like Ghosts of
Country Music,
and was going to do rock and roll.
He did rock and roll.
Or he did rock and roll. Okay.
Matt Swain, he's another author from Llewellyn. We're having him on not next week, but the week after.
Yeah, and he went to like Graceland or something. So there we go. Ghost Box at Graceland. That would be a sellout.
So
I just the humor that you brought up the celebrity thing, considering one of the conversations we had coming here.
Well, and at the beginning of the show, we were talking about getting Robin Williams. You know.
Well, I guess the next.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to tell you a funny thing that did happen. You just reminded me of, and this was a weird one for me because I never thought two things about her, honestly. But I was at a college, and we went to the presentation, doing the investigation that night. Ended up in a theater on campus, a quote unquote haunted theater. They're all haunted. They always tell you they're all haunted. But we ended up in the haunted theater, and we were backstage. I turned on the device and it was very quiet, a lot of static, not a lot coming through. And I said, "Is there anybody out there who wants to communicate?" And I was shocked when the distinct voice of Joan Rivers came through the box.
Wow.
And this was about 3 days after she passed away.
Really?
And
at a
she
theater?
literally, you can ask all these students, she did a stand-up routine. She did 15 minutes
Nice.
for the students.
You know, I can kind of believe that.
Yeah, she literally just had to still perform, and she did a whole routine for the students. They were crying, they were rolling around on the floor, and she did all of her famous lines. It was pretty incredible. It was really cool. But
my God.
when Michael Jackson passed away, he came through almost immediately. And I wasn't even reaching out for these people; they were just kind of coming through. But
they had something to say.
There we go.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. It really is cool stuff.
Of course, you know why theaters are always haunted, right?
Oh,
Something to
I'm
do with
afraid that.
No, because so many actors die on stage.
Oh, but it's true.
Yeah, it actually is. I know
It is true.
the theater where I grew up, it actually is legitimately haunted. I've talked to people who've worked there, and I've talked to a couple other people in the area. And funny story is one of during the final dress rehearsal for every show they do, they'll hear footsteps come down the aisle, walk into one of the rows, and hear the seat go down. Every single time.
You got a ghost who's a fan of
there's the
live
other
theater.
A famous direct because it's somewhat gone. It's past its heyday, but when it was still a bigger thing, it was very popular for a lot of famous actors and directors and things like that. But when a famous one was there, he told the guy he'd never, he'd see to it. The guy never worked again. The guy went to New York Central Park, set himself on fire, and people could hear him screaming in the lights booth when he did it.
Wow. Wow. It's interesting that how much tragedy is associated with theater.
Yeah.
There's always, someone at least one who's, fallen to their death or crushed by a sandbag, or there's always some kind of story that goes along with these old theaters.
Well, because there's so many things that can go wrong in a place like that. There's so many things that are suspended from the ceiling.
Yeah, huge
you've got very emotional people who most actors are very kind of deeply insecure, despite how they present themselves, and so you've got the potential for all kinds of drama and stuff. I actually have been in theater all through high school and into college, and did community theater, so I'm kind of familiar with.
Okay, so we're coming up on the end of the hour, so there's a couple of things I want to get through.
Yes.
First, just in case anybody has some questions, now's your last chance for Chris. Although, if Chris is willing, I'd love to have him on again sometime in the near future.
Definitely.
But you can call in 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492.
I had some people message me while we were talking. They said that they were calling in and that nobody answered. They were just put it. Nobody answered my call.
Do you know anything about that?
You know what?
Is it not working again?
No, put the microphone up.
We have our producers going to answer.
So last week we had issues. We had technical issues with trying to have a caller call in and at the same time as the person who was our guest. So we were waiting until we were told to actually put the number up before we could get answered. And additionally, it was also mentioned in the chat portion of the.
Okay.
If you have any questions, to type them in because they'll get them addressed.
Okay, so folks, if you've been trying to call, as Chris had mentioned, I do apologize. That would be what's been going on with that. I do want to ask Chris a couple of, at least one final question. Well, two final questions, one of which is standard. But the first one would be, are ghost boxes still available if somebody out there is dying to buy one?
Oh, there's a million of these knockoffs out there. You can get apps. You can get.
I'm thinking more of the originals.
Yeah, the originals. That's a tough thing. I'm sitting here right now. I've got. I have Ghost Box number 1, obviously, which is the Frank's Box number 1, 2, 3, and 4. All in my possession, as well as the first video box. Several of the different designs that Frank actually gave me over the years. But things I tell people, and it's an unpopular thing to tell people. They get mad when you say it, but it's a medium's tool. You really should be a true psychic medium. If you're going to use this kind of device, you should know how to ground yourself. You should know how to clear yourself. You should know how to protect the people that you're doing sessions for. Because if you're using the device as a Ouija board, it's a really bad idea. Those dark entities, as I'm sure you know, will find any way they can to manipulate you, and they'll come through. They'll tell you anything you want to hear, up to the point that they gain control and that they're almost impossible to get rid of.
Every time it pops up, Kevin gets tagged in the meme. Do you want demons? Because that's how you get demons.
Yeah.
See, I personally want to track one of these down because while I don't consider myself a medium, I do know protection and things of that nature. Just because you don't go into a violent house if you don't know how to do those things, or at least not if you want to have a long, happy life.
I was going to say, I wonder how well if somebody printed up and it sold in a book the schematics of how to make one.
Well, it sounds like that could be incredibly dangerous.
Chris has just got into one that's a bad idea.
True.
Yeah, let's have hundreds of people out there using these.
Yeah, but keep in mind that they have to follow through enough to build it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Frank actually, when Frank actually did the design, he actually published all the schematics online, gave them to everybody, and basically said, "Go for it. If you can build it, do it." And so far, nobody has copied his design. And it's such a basic thing. But he was a physical medium. He was able to tune the device. That's why it works.
Gotcha. So my next question, which is the standard one for all of our guests, do you have any speaking engagements, any projects coming up, anything you'd like to give a shout out to? Also, of course, please give the name of your YouTube channel again so that people can go check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would go ahead and say, if you want to check me out, best thing to do is go to chrismoonpsychic.com. That's got all of my information on it, where I'm going to be, the book. You can book a reading with me and Dee and my mom. Pretty much everything that I do is listed on that website. It's chrismoonpsychic.com. Next appearance that we have coming up is going to be at the Winter Parafest, and that's happening in Rochester, New York. Let me give you the exact date on that one.
We do actually have a call coming through.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, it's going to be January 14th in Rochester, New York. If anybody's interested, just go to Facebook and look for the information.
There you go. Okay. Caller, you're on there.
Go.
Hello? Who's calling?
Is Dredd there?
Is who?
Dredd?
Dredd?
Yeah, somebody called me for a job. I'm wondering who the hell it was.
Sorry, this.
You've called a radio show.
I think you got the wrong number. You're currently live on a radio show called Paranormal Encyclopedia.
Okay.
That's a first.
It figures our second call in ever would be would be a wrong number.
Actually, we have something on.
Maybe he was trying to tap into my psychic ability to help him out with getting a job.
Hey, there you go.
Beth, what were you saying?
We do actually have somebody on the main chat, by a Clancy Harrington. Please tell Chris that Clancy is listening and he hopes he has a Titanic experience.
Some kind of.
It sounds like there's a story there.
I'm curious about this story.
Yeah, there is a story behind that one. I actually share a past life with Clancy and several other people on the Titanic. We actually had a past life and we were able to pull that all together. through the box and some other means, and were able to figure out exactly who everyone was and pull through the names of who we were at that time.
Oh wow!
This is it's like, okay, we definitely have to have you on again in the future.
So what was Leonardo DiCaprio really like?
He was a jerk.
Yeah, it figures.
But that brings us to the end of the hour. Chris, I want to thank you for coming on. Folks, I'll remind you all, it's Ghost Box, Voices from Spirits, ETs, Shadow People, and Other Astral Beings by Chris and Paulette Moon. It's a great book. I highly recommend checking it out. But Chris, have a good night.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to you soon. Bye, guys.
Good night.
Night, Chris.
Okay, so
on that, I think I'm going to take a quick
bathroom break.
Quick break. Yeah.
We have another caller
Okay.
on the line.
There you go.
Have
Put them
another
through. Let's see if they got. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello, hey, it's Clancy in Iowa.
Oh, hi, Clancy. Of course, we just disconnected with Chris.
Nancy.
Oh, did you just disconnect, of course?
Yeah, because we were having him on for the first hour, and now the second hour we're going to be talking about Christmas.
Oh, well, that's all right. It was a good show. I caught about the last 10 minutes, so that was cool.
Thank you. Thank you for being officially our second on-purpose caller.
Yeah, I heard the last guy who said, "Oh, somebody called me up for a job, man. That was kind of, I didn't know what's up." Yeah.
I love that. That was just fabulous.
You should have offered the guy a job at answering the phones. What the hell?
We do actually have a very talented producer over there. The problem is, since we're using Skype, it's just Skyping, adding somebody to a Skype call. So it's a little hard to do the screening.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I tried to get through on Facebook. I put in a question, but Facebook Live, but nobody seemed to be answering that. So.
No, it got answered. It was stated on the show.
Yeah, that was the last thing Chris answered before he left, actually.
Oh, sure. Well, I was trying to dial in, of course. So that's cool.
Naturally.
But luckily, eventually we'll have this up on our YouTube channel, Paranormal Encyclopedia, as soon as I figure out how to get all the videos and put them on.
As soon as YouTube's willing to cooperate with us.
Facebook's the problem. It's actually the problem.
Facebook's the problem.
We pretty much solved the Facebook problem.
Yeah.
No, she's still having the same problem.
Facebook is always the problem. That's the deal there.
Are you having hosting problems?
We'll talk about it after.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, this is my first time listening to your show because I got the link off of Chris's Facebook page, and I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you very much. We're every Thursday, 6:30 to 8:30. If you want to give us a shot again sometime. Yeah, that's
I will. I got the app downloaded now, and so I'll be tuning back in to hear what you have to say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Night.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, everybody. So yes, our second actual proper caller.
Yay!
Yay!
We win.
By far the funniest accidental call we've had yet.
Yeah, the phone.
Because we've had a few more. We've had people try to call Gene, for example. But that's the first, completely random. They just got the number wrong. It has to be either somebody's trolling us or they got the number wrong.
Yeah.
Probably the number wrong because the guy was like, no nonsense. Like, what?
Yeah.
What is this?
Okay, thanks.
Of all the things to get wrong, it's like you're live on the radio to potentially thousands of people.
Just know you called the wrong number for a job.
Yeah.
Or, no, somebody called him for a job. I think is what he said.
He was calling them back.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that issue was.
Yeah, he probably maybe reversed a couple numbers or something.
Or his voicemail was garbled.
So at any rate, our topic for the second hour tonight, we were going to do this. We wanted to do this near Christmas, but unfortunately, next week we're going to have Chuck Lemon on, who's a Reiki practitioner. He's actually going to come in and bring his crystal singing bowls with him. So we didn't really want to tell him, okay, you need to go sit in the corner now when we do the Christmas thing.
Yep. Well, in the spirit of, I wanted to give you guys these on air.
Oh.
I got stuff for all of us. Here we go. This is for you because you're the grouchy bear.
Aww.
Yay!
And Amisha,
Oh,
I
adorable.
got the penguin, and he dance. He's a penguin.
I knew he kept Brian around for a reason.
There we go. And
Santa Claus.
For me, I brought Santa so that he could be represented here on the Christmas show. Just gonna set these guys up for for your viewing pleasure. So
the producer got coal, everybody.
Nope, she got coal. She got nothing.
I like the other one's got to be for Beth. You're mean.
No, I got Beth Slim Jims. No, I'm kidding.
But so when I first started doing YouTube, over 2 years ago now, for the Christmas special, I did why we celebrate Christmas on December 25th, which is going to be part of tonight. We'll also talk about Santa Claus and where he comes from, and where some of the other Christmas traditions come from. So here's the thing, and I'm going to reveal the great secret that everyone out there already knows. A lot of Christmas traditions are based on pagan religion.
Yep.
Show me your lack of shock. And this is kind of why I did this on YouTube first, and now we're doing it here, is every year I get these extended Facebook posts informing me of how Christmas trees and holly and mistletoe and wreaths and Yule logs are all pagan in origin. And my answer is, duh!
This Santa has a fake beard.
Watch me die, I'm not surprised.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Not surprised.
Santa's bogus.
The fact is, I think the majority of Christians are well aware that, Christmas trees are Norse in origin, I believe, actually.
Yeah, something Norse German.
Christmas trees, wreaths, and Yule. In fact, the whole Yule thing comes from the Norse Germanic. And the Norse and the Germans basically worship the same gods by slightly different names.
Yeah. But like Yuletide, I think, is actually German for like.
Well, it's a winter solstice ceremony practiced in Nordic cultures by both Germans and the Norse that takes place in this time period.
I'm trying to remember what the actual translation for Yuletide is.
I have actually no idea. Which is one of the first things I want to talk about is, so when people talk about, well, why do we celebrate Christmas on December 25th? They go, well, Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. Just about everybody seems to know this these days. And two, the Bible says, and I actually have the verse, in Luke 2:8, it talks about shepherds watching over their sheep at night in the fields. Now, if you live in Europe or if you live in the United States, who has livestock out in the fields at night in late December, in the middle of winter? Which sounds good. It's like nobody does that. Here's the thing. I don't know. I have no idea which latitude we are in, or most of the United. But most of Northern Europe is pretty far north of the equator. Yeah. Bethlehem in Israel is at 31.7 degrees latitude.
Yeah,
it's a lot warmer there.
I think if you look on like one of those maps that's actually correct, North America, a lot of North America lines up with like Spain. And that region of Europe.
I was reading.
Well, Spain's closer towards the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah.
And it's.
I mean, as far as like longitude.
But yeah, Italy is closer to where Israel is in terms of longitude. And for that matter, the closest
Northern Africa.
I don't know. Geography is not my strong suit, but at least one of the people I was reading was saying the warmer parts of Texas are closer to the same latitude that we're talking about. And the climate's completely different. We know that the reality is in the desert, like much of Israel is, it gets very, very cold at night. But we do know of people, even today, shepherds in parts of Italy that are in this long latitude, and for that matter, shepherds in Israel do keep their sheep out at night, even through the winter months, just because it's not as cold as it is everywhere else. You're not getting the snow that you think of. So no, the whole, in Bethlehem
and the sheep
around 4 BCE, which is when he was probably, 4 to 2 BCE is when he was probably born. The only thing we know for sure about the date is that it wasn't 0 AD. but and part of why we know that is because King Herod the Great, the wise men visited on the way to see Jesus, died in, I want to say, 4 BC or 4 somewhere between like 4 to 3 2 in that area before current era, what they used to call BC. So they couldn't have visited him when he was already dead. It doesn't really work. Plus, there's a number of astronomical phenomenon that did happen in that time period in the vicinity of Bethlehem that might be what the wise men were following. Particularly, Halley's Comet passes over around the right time in terms of years, and would have passed over that latitude, excuse me. And if you know anything about astrology, comet, through the Middle Ages and into ancient times, comets are momentous symbols of something very important. When Halley's Comet passed overhead, in fact, which was just after the death of Julius Caesar, the then crowned Emperor Augustus Caesar pointed to the comet and said that it was Julius rising up into heaven.
Yep. Well, the guy was a master politician.
Oh yeah.
He knew how to spin propaganda. I mean, we still believe, or at least most people still believe, a bunch of the stuff said about Cleopatra that was part of his smear campaign against her. So
to be fair,
the guy knew what he was doing.
Well, of course he knew what he was doing because Octavius, later known as Augustus, was abroad because he was in exile.
Yep.
He had to learn a few things.
Oh yeah. Well, he ran originally when Caesar was killed and came back later to claim his inheritance.
But anyway, there's a couple of where do we get December 25th from? There's a couple of pagan holidays that people usually connect it to. One of the obvious that we've already talked about is Yule. Yule is right in that time period.
Right.
The thing
Since we're talking Romans, there's Saturnalia.
I'll get there. There's
okay.
You're absolutely
Which
right.
goes back to Chronosia.
I thought it was just a perfect segue.
I know, but there's a point I wanted to make about Yule. There's a logical progression in what I'm saying. The thing is, the earliest that we know that Christians were celebrating Christmas on December 25th was the 3rd century. I have the exact date. I even have a source on it, if I can find where I wrote it down on my notes. They Pascha Computus, which was written in 240 current era, mentioned, that's something else. Excuse me. I'll get back to what I just mentioned in a minute because it does relate to something. But no, basically, there we go. The first record we have from early Christians cementing December 25th as the date of Christ's birth is 284 AD. The Roman Christianity was not in contact with the Germanic or the Nordic people in 284 AD. It was Yule. The next likely candidate, which is more likely because it's a widespread pagan holiday, of course, is the winter solstice. The winter solstice falls usually on December 22nd. It's the 21st to the 23rd, which is really close to Christmas. Christmas starts at midnight on December 25th technically, so Christmas Eve, 24th, not the 23rd. The next one is one that Brian mentioned, which is Saturnalia. Saturnalia was a major Roman holiday. It was practiced at the time that we know the Christians started practicing Christmas, but it started on December 17th, and it's actually a week long.
Well, yeah, it
was just the 17th, and then it was extended to end on the 23rd. So it still comes slightly short of the date.
Yeah, that wasn't the exact date. It was more the whole that era or that time period being sort of a festive holiday, and the gift giving and stuff like that. Well, a lot of that was
gift giving is actually Roman paganism, without question. The last one before I get into the biblical reasons would be a pair that in this sense are related, which is the feast of the unconquered sun, Sol Invictus, and the birthday of the Persian deity Mithras. Which both are in fact on December 25th, which by far would be the best case where this is where Christianity got the idea, because it's the same bloody day, except for there's a problem. As I said, 284 AD is the earliest known record of Christians celebrating Christmas on December 25th. There's no record of anyone celebrating Sol Invictus or the birthday of Mithras on that date until 354 CE, current era, or AD if you prefer. Which means there's every possibility, and I'm not saying this is certain, but there's every possibility that the Mithras cult, which did, let's be clear, worship of Mithras absolutely predates Christianity. We know that. But they didn't adopt that specific date until after the Christians already had. So there's at least a possibility that the Christians adopted it first, and then the Mithras cult got the idea from them. Because it's absolutely factually true. Christianity borrowed enormously from paganism. On a lot of it, originally Christian, now largely secular holiday of Halloween is purely a Celtic paganism tradition that the Christians hijacked.
Well, it makes sense if you already have people used to celebrating a big festival on this day.
Oh, you can still celebrate it. It's just our God's the one.
You just add yours in.
Yeah, because in certain areas it was allowed to be inclusive. However, and I understand what you have is what's documented and what's written. Yeah. Something I will point out, it's only because I was actually looking into, I found an article not that long ago about genetics in Egypt of certain mummies and whatnot, and how there were actually individuals who, at a time where it wasn't even thought possible that, I forget what the exact time frame was, but it was like essentially in the BC era or whatever the
BCE is what they call it. Before current era and before current
era. The BCE era. And essentially they were people that were essentially Nords, Nordic peoples, who essentially had no business, according to what current history states, being down. So, as far as there being no contact with the Germanics,
the Romans absolutely had contact with the Germanic people. There's no denying that.
Oh, they fought them many times.
Yeah. And they also recruited them to do their own battles. However,
the Praetorians were a lot of times Germans.
3rd century Christianity specifically is what I'm talking about in their contact. And so let me back up a second and clarify. The form of Christianity being practiced in Rome in the 3rd century was underground because it was still illegal. They had very little, if any, contact with the Germanic people. They may have had some contact, but not to the point that they're likely to have adopted a German holiday.
As a good majority of them, just in general, of them would have been commoners such as merchants, farm folk, things like that. They probably would have had a decent amount with other travelers along the road and things like that.
They could have gone to the frontier
just because most of those documentations came from higher ranks, nobles, scholars, even the emperor, pope, what have you. Not pope, but you know what I mean. At that time, there's a bit of a skew that's favoring, and I understand favoring what is written. Yeah. But it's entirely possible that there's other things that
you have a point. I'll definitely concede there's a point there. Though there's the whole other part of this I'm going to get into in a minute. But the general idea is that they just adopted the date of Yule to make it easier to convert the pagans into the state religion that was now Christianity under Emperor Constantine. That's definitely not true because, one, it wasn't the state religion at the time. And two,
it went back and forth for a while before.
And here's the other thing that's interesting. I keep specifying Roman Christianity because there are Christians we know had contact with the Norse and Germanic people at the time, which would be it's a whole other thing into itself to do an episode on. But the sect of Christianity known as Gnosticism was active in that area. But Gnostics have a whole different take on this whole thing.
Yeah. But I was thinking, because Christians, when they weren't popular and underground, that actually would have been a pretty good reason for them to go further toward, the frontier, where the Romans sort of grip on everything is a little lighter.
But
and there would have been
the sect that did that was
the Gnostics.
Largely different. I mean, specifically when I say Roman Christianity, I don't even mean Roman Catholicism, because Catholicism doesn't really exist as an independent thing until the 11th century.
Additionally, even politically or just socially speaking, because let's face it, they put it on what the current celebrations at that time would have been, especially within Rome, which Saturnalius, as we had mentioned, if it was on any of the days during the main festival, according to the rough dates that we have, that would have caused a complete crap storm. But to be fair, so having it close enough, but not exactly on those dates, would have been a little friendlier to anybody who is still resistant.
Well, then there's the whole other case that I think now is a good time to get into of, well, why, if you're going to pick, there are other important pagan holidays and other holidays that were important to the German pagans, and for the matter, the Roman pagans, and the question then becomes, well, again, why December 25th? Why specifically this date? And here's the question. When everybody starts asking questions about why December 25th is the date, they start looking at pagan holidays on December 25th, which logically makes sense. The date we're looking for to get this started isn't in December. It's in June. Specifically June 24th. Why June 24th? Because there's a very important figure that, unlike Christianity, even most atheists, or Christ himself, most atheists will agree that John the Baptist is a historical figure. Well, when was John the Baptist born? Well, we find a mention of when in Luke 1:26. Luke 1:5. We'll come back to 26 in a minute, which mentions that Zacharias, who was the father of John the Baptist, is visited, just like Mary. It's very famous that Mary was visited by an angel to be told she would carry Jesus. The same is true of Zacharias, the father of John the Baptist. He was told that he would carry John the Baptist, which is particularly important because his wife was supposed to be at the age where she was barren. Now, Luke 1:5 talks about him serving one of the 24 courses of Jewish festivals, specifically the course of Abias, which is the 8th of the 24. NEH 1217 talks about it in greater detail. So, and he's told that his wife is now pregnant, will become pregnant with John the Baptist, and then the Bible says that he's conceived a few days later. Now we know from other texts that the destruction of Jerusalem fits with the first course of these 24, and that would happen in the 9th day of the Jewish month of Aviv, which would put the Feast of Abias somewhere between September 22nd and October 8th. So if it happened just afterwards, September, October is probably a reasonable time for John the Baptist to have been born, or to have been conceived. So if you add 9 months to that, you come up with June. In fact, in Catholic tradition, the birth of John the Baptist was June 24th. Now, why this is important is that from Luke 1:24 to 27 and 36, we know that Elizabeth, who's the mother of John the Baptist, was 6 months pregnant with John the Baptist when she went to visit Mary, and that's when the Annunciation happens to Mary, for Mary. I'm mixing myself up.
This is why I now see why you don't use notes.
Yes, but basically, we know from Scripture, Luke, the ones in Luke I just cited, that she was basically, John the Baptist is 6 months older than Jesus. When you add dates together, that gives you June 24th as the birthday. 6 months later is December 25th. Also, if you take 3 months out of this whole equation, you come up with March 25th, which is a very important day in Catholic tradition that has largely been forgotten in the modern era, which is called the Feast of the Annunciation. The Bible says that the Archangel Gabriel appeared to Mary and told her that she would carry Jesus. And this is a thing that always drives me crazy, because people will say that Mary was raped by God. No. The angel comes to Mary and says, okay, you've been chosen, you are blessed amongst women, you will carry the Son of God. And she says, I am God's handmaid. And she absolutely consented to it. When this all happens, by the math I just went through, would be March 25th, the Feast of the Annunciation. There's another reason why the Feast of the Annunciation is particularly seen as the date of as March 25th. So, in Jewish tradition in the first century, there was a belief that a prophet or a Messiah or anyone of great importance like this lived a more idealized and perfect life. And if you're going to live the perfect life, especially, you're talking about the Messiah, perfect person, he lived a perfect life. He was born, he died on the day he was conceived. That was the logic behind it. So this book I mentioned earlier, because I mixed it up, De Pascha Completus, from 248 current era AD, says that Christ died on March the 25th. So if we go again by the Jewish beliefs, and remember everything else aside, Christianity starts as a radical sect of Judaism. The Jewish belief at the time was that a prophet dies on the day they're conceived, not the day they're born, the day they're conceived, which gives us March 25th as the date of the conception. 25th plus March 25th plus 9 months, give or take, you're winding up at December 25th. When you particularly add into that, for that matter, the Orthodox Church. So the Roman Catholic Church, Christmas is December 25th. Eastern Orthodox Church, which keeps some of the best records in Christianity, quite honestly, disagrees by a month. Orthodox Christmas is January 6th. And why is it different? Different calendars. Does anything I've just gone through, any of the notes I've made, any of the Bible verses I've just given, any of the historical sources I cite, prove that Jesus was born on December 25th? Absolutely not. Nor am I going to claim that it does. I can't, I don't have a TARDIS, so I can't go back 2,000 years and figure out when he was really born, as much as I might like to. And I can, and it's probably a topic better suited to another day, give you evidence for that Jesus was a historical figure, because that's recently also come into debate. But I'm not going to do that tonight in particular. Besides the fact there's more Christmas stuff to talk about, I want to do a little more research to make sure I have all my sources straightened out. But there is definitely a biblical case that Jesus was born on December 25th.
So are you saying you'll get to it?
Exactly. My point in all saying,
Brian.
And
I was waiting for that for like a half hour. I was waiting for an opening for that joke.
It was worth it. Give him the credit. It was worth it. The joke was funny.
That was a dad joke.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah. I'm 40. I thought it was funny.
Oh, I'm practiced. With my nephews. They call them uncle jokes because of an episode of Teen Titans Go.
There's undeniably overlap between
it's the same thing. It's just whether you call them dad jokes or uncle jokes. But so since I'm their uncle, I have decided it is my obligation to tell uncle jokes.
It clearly is.
So I tell Caleb, my nephew,
I think
uncle
when my
jokes
nephews
all
get
the time.
old enough to really register, and Nathan's getting there.
You gotta look up and start getting some uncle jokes.
And Gravity Falls also particularly called them uncle jokes.
Uncle Stan.
That might be the new term for it.
Back real quick. The reason why I've gone through this long, half an hour long diatribe on December 25th is really simple. There are it isn't even actually the pagans that say, "Oh, it's pagan," that annoy me so much. It's the other Christians that annoy me, because there are a lot of Christians. Jehovah's Witnesses in particular are big on this, that completely dismiss, mock, and try to shame Christians who celebrate on Christmas on December 25th. And I'm saying that's bullshit. If you want to celebrate Christmas on December 25th, Merry Christmas. If you don't, that's cool too.
My big objection is celebrating Christmas on November 25th.
Oh, well,
the freaking day after Thanksgiving. Let's run out to the store and.
There's an old medieval tradition about that, or superstition, I should say, about that. I think we should reinstate. See, up until relatively recently, it was considered very bad luck to put up a single Christmas decoration before December 1st.
I agree with that. I think it should be a law, actually. I don't want to see a damn Christmas. I don't want to hear a Christmas song. Nothing before December.
I absolutely love Christmas, and I'm 100% with Brian on this.
Yeah, I'm still in the running with Whamageddon.
Well, that one, I already lost that.
I'm still up and running, too.
Yeah.
And to those of you who don't know, Whamageddon is basically a contest to see how long people can go without hearing that stupid Last Christmas song. and if you hear it, you have to put up hashtag Whamageddon, and I'm out.
See, what this made me immediately think of, if I had any video, if I was a Misha, so like if I had any video editing skills at all, is I'd set up. You guys remember what the Rickroll thing is?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you send out fake links with.
I wanted to send out.
Not for nothing. The rules say PvP. It's not supposed to be a battle royale free for all. There were actually rules posted for this, and I'm still going, what are they talking about? And the thing is, because this competition was going on, I'm not even going to look for it. Thank you for the clarification, but I know I'm safe.
Yeah. See, I just wanted to.
Last Christmas.
That doesn't. No. The rules are that it has to be the original version.
Yes, of
Alternate
course.
versions are not valid for the competition, so you can listen to those to your heart's content.
Yeah,
See, I just wanted to start trolling people.
Sadly, there are covers.
It's like, check out the latest Last Jedi trailer. And it's,
instead
it's Last Christmas.
Do it.
It's like, you've been Last Christmas rolled. You lose the competition.
You've been wham rolled.
No,
Or whammed.
You've been whammed.
You didn't say whammed.
Actually, it was hilarious. I was at karaoke, and one of the people that was with me, my boyfriend actually, one of the people with us got up and started singing Dominant the Donkey, and he's like, I do everything I can to avoid this song, and now it's playing. Oh God! He's like, it's only December 4th, and I'm sitting there going, I wait all December to hear this at least once, and I'm lucky if I get it on Christmas Day.
But you got it.
You're waiting because you know.
I have a baby nephew, so around Christmas, I'm sure I'm going to hear that song to death. I like it too because it's silly and funny.
Silly is good.
But I'm sure my baby cousins will drive it into the ground.
Oh yeah.
So speaking of Christmas songs, there's an interesting factoid I wanted to inform people about the Christmas Story.
Oh, there's so many. Which one? The movie or?
No. The biblical Christmas. Correction. The nativity scene.
The nativity scene.
So everyone has probably heard at least a bajillion times the song "We Three Kings of Orient Are." Yeah. Or you've heard of the three wise men or the three magi?
Yeah.
Okay.
I prefer the three wise guys.
Or the three wise guys.
Three
wise. From Brooklyn. You know that.
Three wise guys from Jersey came to see him. We brought you your tribute.
What is this, Goodfellas?
Exactly. So here's the kicker. So first of all, they weren't kings. They were what's called magi. Magi were astrologers and priests in Zoroastrianism, the Persian religion. That's point one that's interesting. Point two is, if you actually go with the Bible, they show up a year, sometime after Christ is born, not the night he's born. And some interpretations, it's as far away as a year later. And also, by the way, everyone thinks of you have the three wise men. The Bible doesn't give enough, just says wise men came to see Jesus. It doesn't say how many. It says they brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh, 3 gifts. Various myths say that anywhere between 3,000 and 3,000 men showed up. That's quite the trade of gifts for Jesus when you think about it.
Yeah, does the Bible mention like Mary and Joseph living like kings for the rest of their life after that? I mean, is that?
No, they still lived like commoners because Joseph was a carpenter.
And they're keeping it real.
But they kept it real. They were the original OGs. Yeah,
but
they just happened to have this mountain of gold and frankincense and myrrh in the backyard.
So, God's mother below.
Yeah. Okay.
So everything I just went through is reasonably common knowledge. Now it's time to drop the bomb.
Oh.
The Magi
Oh no.
Yeah, they were astrologers. They were also necromancers and black magicians. If you read any other ancient text that talk of other magicians around the world that talk about the Magi, people were terrified of them. These guys were like the Satanists of the first century current era.
So it was like
They didn't worship Satan, but they were that scary.
So it was like Jesus was visited by 3 Sith lords or something, in his cradle.
It's like
Okay, first of all, Jesus was not Anakin. let's make that perfectly clear.
His midi-chlorian count was off the charts.
Jesus was not Anakin, but as a dear friend of mine who likes to cosplay Jesus frequently has pointed out to me in the past.
Is it the same person I'm thinking of?
Gil?
Yeah.
But as Gil has pointed out to me in the past, Jesus is clearly a Sith. Because if you remember your Jedi code, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Jedi and Sith, I know it.
Yeah. Jedi are forbidden to love. And Jesus is all about the love.
I'll buy Grey going into Sith. I'll buy Grey Jedi going into Sith.
Also, it kind of fits because, well, I guess
I know. I still love that.
I love how many memes you see where somebody gave their grandmother a picture of Ewan McGregor as Ben Kenobi, and the grandma thinks it's Jesus and keeps the picture up there.
That's kind of mean.
I'm sure some of that is fake, but I'll bet you that has happened at least a few times.
Somebody actually was able to get away with it with guy that plays Thor.
But no,
Chris Hemsworth?
I'm actually
with the long hair and everything.
I can see Chris Hemsworth passing for Jesus, when he's in his
No. Whenever his hair's dirty from a fight or something, is kind of
because I was going to say there have been Nordic depictions of Jesus I've heard of.
Well, that's a whole other topic. Jesus looked absolutely nothing like everyone thinks he did.
No.
But anyway, hey, I was going to say, I don't picture Jesus as a Sith Lord. I picture him as saying, screw it, I am going to make a completely third option.
Which would be the Grey Jedi.
He's Mark Hamill.
Well, I'm inclined to think it's like Lucas once said, and I think there's a degree of truth to that. There are no Grey Jedi; they're just dark Jedi. They're fooling themselves. But the thing is, the Jedi are wrong.
The Jedi are known for their arrogance, and that's what the new 3 were supposed to point out was the arrogance of the Jedi, because you didn't have that backstory. Which is pretty much the only good that pretty much came out of that trilogy, let's be honest. It was to show the arrogance of the Jedi, which you saw the Sith wasn't as bad, but it's just the Empire itself was what needed.
It's also the Jedi are also based on a common Western misunderstanding of Buddhism.
Yeah.
Because there's this idea that in Buddhism you're supposed to deny desire and deny love and things of that nature, which isn't entirely the case. It's more of a you can't completely deny all desire. You have desire. You can't control it as part of being human. It's how you control it and how you act upon it. And it's the right thinking and the right meditation and things like that.
Well, because Lucas got most of his Lucas got most of his ideas from samurai and kind of early Japanese movies that depicted Buddhist monks as being these paragons of self-control and restraint and whatnot. So he just thought, that's
and a lot of the Jedi code was based similar to Bushido.
Yeah, which again, Bushido, a lot of historians now say that the real samurai probably never lived according to this.
Really
a lot of it was,
they didn't. But the thing is, that was what, at least in public, you had to hold up to.
Well, it was.
Often enough, they didn't even hold up to it in public.
No, it was. They were mostly an aristocracy by then, but it was a guy writing about.
But then again, you could get married almost as many times as you wanted.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. One, the whole idea of Bushido came about after the main period of the samurai was over. It was
like the 1700s that the guy was writing about how wonderful the samurai were.
At the end of the Warring States period, I would say, when the shogun finally consolidated power, a fair number of samurai turned into bandits.
Yep.
Because they were professional soldiers without a war to fight.
Well, yeah, because the thing is, for the longest time, you had the actual emperor.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you had the shogunate. And I'm trying to remember when, because I think that was also around the Nobunaga's time frame because Nobunaga almost actually united Japan. And right when he almost had it completely together, one of his closest aides, who he essentially figured as a brother, stabbed him in the back and destroyed everything in one fell swoop. The only thing that was more destructive and destroyed an entire empire was the aftermath of Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
Where it was, who inherits? Fight for it.
Yep. We got way off the top of Christmas.
No, I was about to say, I love how we're going to have this nice Christmas episode, and we just go into Star Wars and all that.
We stayed on topic for a good amount of time. It's a better record than we normally have.
Our geekiness can't be denied.
Besides, Chris,
that's for sure.
When Amisha and I leave the show at 8:30, and we're not going to be running over because of this, we are booking it to Hazlitt, New Jersey, to go see The Last Jedi.
That was the other reason I brought it up, is because I knew you guys would want to talk Star Wars, tonight.
Especially tonight.
Wars, nothing but I do want to touch real quick, because it's the other part of Origins of Christmas.
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus, and where we get the image of Santa Claus from.
The Coca-Cola Company.
No, actually, that's a common myth.
No. The idea of Santa Claus and Saint Nick is
the image isn't. They didn't come up with the image either.
Really? Because I'm pretty sure the artist.
The common image that we have now, that everybody mainly thinks about first, especially younger children, comes from the
Coca-Cola advertising.
However, the precursors have been around far longer. They were not as big or anything like that.
I've heard this too. It's also it is in fact incorrect.
Wow.
Everything in our image of Santa Claus, the red suit, the green, the big bowls full of jelly, the rosy cheeks, the big white beard, actually comes from the I always want to call them the Pennsylvania Dutch, because that's basically who they were. They were Germans that settled in the United States who wound up getting called Dutch.
The Amish.
Because of a misunderstanding. No, Pennsylvania Dutch, not quite. They're also.
They're in the same area.
Same area, not entirely, because the ones in question are actually ones who settled in New York, not Pennsylvania.
Well, the
Deutsch.
Yes.
They essentially originated from a somewhat similar area and settled not that far away from each other.
Yeah. But they brought with them a Germanic belief of a man they called Sinterklaas. Now, Sinterklaas,
Klaus.
Red suit, white fluffy beard. This is where Coca-Cola, in fact, got the image. Everyone thinks Coca-Cola did it. The reality is, no, they just...
Sinterklaas is just German for Saint Nicholas.
Right.
Yes, and we're gonna get to Saint Nick in a minute.
And then it got bastardized into Santa Claus.
And he was never overly round.
Yeah, normally he was...
In the New York legends of him, he was.
Oh.
But in the original ones where they originally came from...
True, but the American legends of him predate Coca-Cola taking the image, and in the American version of the legends, he was fat.
Yeah.
Not St. Nicholas of Myra himself, the actual historical figure, and we'll get to him in a minute. But Sinterklaas, at least as he was seen by the Deutsch in question, specifically the person who there are two people primarily responsible for cementing our idea of Santa Claus. One is actually Washington Irving, who recorded a lot of upstate New York folklore into his stories. And the other one, I forget the man's name, but he's the man who wrote the poem "'Twas the Night Before Christmas."
Yeah, Visit from Saint
Nick. The 8 tiny reindeer come from the poem.
Right. No, I knew the poem had a big impact, but I know advertisers before that, when they used Santa Claus, they drew him in a number of different ways.
True, but the images are even again they're drawing on older images that are similar to the Coca-Cola image.
Yeah.
So Santa Claus himself is based on actually more than one thing in reality, but the most basic basis is a guy who's actually really kind of badass, who is Saint Nicholas of Myra. I wrote down so I would remember. So he's a fourth century bishop of Myra in what is modern day Turkey. Now he's actually
so therefore turkey on Christmas is very totally appropriate.
There's two stories in particular I want to talk about, both of which are probably apocryphal, but they give you an idea of St. Nicholas's character and the way people's popularly seen him. One is the one tied to the story of Santa Claus. That there was a man in the town that was destitute who was about to sell his two daughters into sexual slavery. And on Christmas Eve, Nicholas walked by the house and threw a bag of gold either down the chimney or through the window that the man was able to use to pay his debts and didn't have to sell his daughters into slavery. Probably didn't actually happen. But this is why
that'd be an interesting tradition. Just go around chucking like bags of heavy gold through windows and stuff.
So, which leads to a fun little known fact. So, as to the surprise of nobody, Saint Nicholas is patron saint of children. He's also the patron saint of hookers.
Nice.
Saint Nicholas, the basis of Santa Claus, is the patron saint of hookers.
So there we go. Buy a hooker on Christmas. It's what Saint Nick would want you to do.
What would Jesus do? Buy a hooker.
Buy a hooker. No, not Jesus. What would Saint Nick do?
Because of him saving the two daughters,
Jesus would convert a hooker
for being sold as hookers. Basically, he became the patron saint of hookers.
Yeah. If you go by that story.
Now, would there be male hookers too, or
yes, all of them.
Yes, all of them.
Equally popular in the ancient world. Male hookers.
They actually had something similar where just as a surprise, there's a Japanese deity by the name of Inari, who is a fox god. And if I remember right, the main thing he was a patron of
tentacles.
was
panties.
Stop.
Seriously.
Anyway,
one time's running short and let the lady
that's
tell the
true.
story.
All right.
And his main thing was rice fields. However, because most of the rice fields were in the poor districts, and as things were expanding, and where people were moving into the villages outside of cities and whatnot, and I'm probably a little off on this as far as the exact order, but because there wasn't enough to farm, people needed to make a living, brothels started getting set up near the temples and shrines because space, and that was literally all it was. As far as I can recollect, my sister tells it better. But because of that, he was one of the things that was later added on to the things that
was prostitution.
Yeah.
I like it. So the other story of Saint Nicholas I wanted to share before I get into the other major inspiration for Santa Claus is a story that comes from the Council of Nicaea. Now, the Council of Nicaea, aside from the fact that they and let's be clear, this is also an episode unto itself. The Council of Nicaea did not cherry pick 27 books to turn into the New Testament. They codified 27 existing books into the New Testament, which is a topic for another night. But one of the debates that happens is a man by the name, in fact, a bishop by the name of Arius. Dan Brown outright lies about this. But the predominant theory at the time in Christians was Jesus was God. It was the Trinity idea. Jesus and God are the same person. Arius disagreed. He believed that Jesus was basically a God in service to God. He was a secondary deity, closely linked and working with the Father, but not the same being. This led to a great debate it was a great spirited debate among the 218 bishops. Ultimately,
spirited.
If you read Dan Brown's books, it barely passes. In reality, 216 out of the 218 all agreed that with the modern interpretation of Jesus was God. But there's the wonderful story, probably apocryphal story, that during the debate, St. Nicholas lost his shit and punched Arius in the face.
Hey, it makes a certain amount of sense. If you've ever seen like the parliament in other countries, like the government officials, it gets rowdy. There are fist fights on the British Parliament floor. Why would a bunch of people discussing religion, which is a really heated topic, why would that be any different?
You want to talk about brawls breaking out in public? Forget Parliament. Talk about any bar prior to coffee becoming the main staple during the Enlightenment. There were brawls for
everywhere.
Days in all of the finest suits getting ripped, hats getting crushed. It was glorious.
Oh yeah.
So Saint Nicholas is only part of the inspiration for Santa Claus. The other part is actually in quite Germanic and Norse. Notice Santa Claus comes from the Germans.
Mm-hmm.
There's a degree of debate about this, like there is everyone else, but there is a fair amount of evidence that Santa Claus was at least partly inspired by Odin. Specifically,
the Kringle.
During winter months, among the many, Odin, as we all know from the Thor movies, is the king of the gods in Norse mythology. Aside from that, he's also the god of hospitality, which is very important in Norse culture.
Yeah. Like so many.
There is a legend. There's a Germanic legend that certain nights of the year around the winter, and I think in fact Yule's a big part of it, children would hang their stockings and they would put apples and various other offerings, not for Odin himself, but for Sleipnir, Odin's six-legged horse. And in return for this gift for his horse, as a sign of hospitality, Odin would leave them candies and small toys. This is probably also part of the inspiration. There's also a tradition in Rome that I want to say on Saturnalia, the slaves would be served at dinner by their masters.
Yes.
Yeah,
there was a reversal of the social order.
And also we're given gifts, and that's also part of the gift-giving tradition. Ironically, that tradition is continued. I don't know if it still is, but for a long time was continued by American military, where it was traditional on Christmas Eve that the junior officers would be served Christmas dinner by the senior officers.
That is, it depends on who and where.
Yeah, I would assume.
Because I know a few people where like they were at a post on like Christmas Eve, and the general came out to give them their food, and in one particular story, it was like a general, I forget what rank, but his wife was with him, and he went to give them their food and leave, and she actually turned around and goes, they have to have a chance to eat. You stand guard while they eat. Yeah. And she made her husband stand guard in the middle of the night.
And let everyone eat.
While the boys had a chance to eat. It's because he didn't want to be bothered because it was cold as hell out. Okay, that's fine. But something else I do want to add on for the Norse. There was another figure that I found out prior, like on my own research. There was another figure. It was actually a female figure in Norse mythology who did something similar, where it's.
I'm forgetting which one, but I've read
that
which
one I'm talking about.
I know of her. I wish Drew was here. He'd know the name.
Not
she
Freya,
would.
Right?
But no, it's not Freya.
Frigga?
No, it wasn't. No.
Okay, that exhausts my memory.
Your knowledge of female Norse deities. Yeah.
But at least I don't believe so. But
there are more than just only two.
She had a essentially a companion who got turned into a pig, and she would use him as her steed on certain nights, and would bring gifts to the people. I forget what the exact circumstances were because all these stories have their own exact circumstances or a particular group. But there was something similar with her during the same time frame.
Do you know where Kris Kringle came from? The term.
I've read, but I forget.
Santa's sort of alternate identity sometimes.
Where does it come from?
I don't remember. I was actually asking you. I wasn't.
It was a legitimate question.
Yeah, I wasn't setting up for a joke or anything. But
I was hoping you were setting up to give it to.
Yeah,
info.
I would have. I should have looked that up because that was something I thought of before. But
and of course, the other thing that's interesting, we don't
callers.
have
If anybody knows the answer to this, please.
609-807-2492.
Or type it in.
609-807-2492.
Did Kris Kringle come from Saint Nicholas, or is it a separate guy that got merged in, or what?
I think it was a separate thing.
Because wasn't there like some rich guy, not Saint Nicholas, but some rich guy that was like renowned in Germany or whatever for like
I honestly have no idea.
Gave gifts to everybody on Christmas.
But there is one other figure I want to talk about since none of us seem to remember and nobody's calling in because there's somebody else that's often overlooked and everyone should remember this time of year. Right at his
the Grinch.
Close. And I believe that his traditional feast is actually just passed. But let's all take a moment to remember Krampus.
Yes.
Before he became cool.
Yes.
It's
Your hipster Krampus, like we knew about him before he was mainstream.
Krampus is essentially a demonic-looking figure. He has the horns, big and furry, and the whole.
It's another wonderful German tradition.
So, when if you're good, Santa Claus will bring you presents. If you're bad, if Krampus is in a good mood, he'll beat you with the switch. If he's in a bad mood, he'll toss you in his sack and take you away to the North Pole and devour you.
Wasn't he also the original guy that gave the coal, left coal for naughty children? I
don't know if it was,
that was if they were kind of bad but not bad enough to deserve horrific beatings.
I don't know off the top of my head. Honestly, that may be true. The thing to realize that people in the U.S. don't know is in Germany and Scandinavia and a bunch of other places, it's not just Santa Claus. He has a little gathering of people who help him aside from the elves. And then I'm not talking about the elves. One is, of course, Krampus. Another one is a gentleman by the name of Swarthy Pete, who is a dark-skinned dwarf. Who is, imagine a short, dark-skinned version of Krampus, and you have the idea, basically. He's the one who punishes the naughty children. Maybe it's me, but I sort of regret the fact that we as Americans just kept Santa Claus. It's where's the fun stuff?
Well, and speaking of Christmas, while we're doing this quick trivia, Christmas was originally outlawed in America because it was a horrible drunken thing in England, a terrible holiday that was more like mischief night than the Christmas we know. And you can look this up. But it was originally for many, many years was banned in America.
What?
Gino's trying to call in.
Oh. Okay, put him in. See what he says. He knows what. Hello, you're on the air.
I think we may have just lost him.
Oh.
Yeah, you lost him.
Sorry.
Maybe he'll call back. Sorry, Gino.
We're going to have to go in a minute, so if he calls back.
Yeah.
Well.
It's just going to be me tap dancing for the camera for another 30
And nobody
minutes.
wants to watch that. In all seriousness, folks. And it's kind of the point, at least for me, that's the point of this discussion. Christianity borrowed a lot of things from paganism. The reverse is also true. The thing people don't seem to fail to understand is religions borrow ideas from each other all the bloody time. This has been going on since literally before recorded history.
People meet, they exchange ideas, those ideas spread. Yep. It's, the natural way of things. That's how languages change.
If you pick up a copy of the Epic of Gilgamesh, you can find in a much older text almost the exact story of Noah. So they call him a Upanishad or something to that effect.
Yeah, because the whole thing with Noah was essentially a parable for the series of repetitive at random floods that would happen.
Well, there's also thought to have been a flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates that almost flooded out that entire area.
It happened on more than one occasion. There were actually, according to Babylonian Sumerian texts, that it was a regular occurrence and it had actually no rhyme or reason. It wasn't seasonal or something like that.
See, I always had this thought. So not all over the world, but in many cultures you have this tradition of a flood. Babylon's famous for it. Greece had one. There's some Native American tribes that have one. And I've seen
some people think Atlantis disappeared under a flood.
Oh, this is definitely a subject for another day. But people who have made the argument, a flood. There was a worldwide flood, and as much as I'm a devout Christian, I have to say there was no worldwide flood. There's absolutely no evidence for it. But if there was one, which version's right? And the first version I had, a version I saw somebody on a YouTube channel jokingly comment is, maybe Noah's out there on the ark, and, sailing across, and he's just waving as a Upanishad sails by. And it's that's good. But what would be better? What if they're all true? They all happened exactly the same time in a single worldwide flood. And basically just before the end of the flood, the God or the gods said, okay, only one of you gets to repopulate the earth. Epic cage match!
Throw in a monsoon and you got the end of Pirates 3.
Pretty much. Big big world
giant pirate movie of Noah versus all the other flood myths in a single battle royale. Tell me you would not go to see that.
It has to be a monsoon because honestly, that's the only way you're going to get them, especially with the technology that they had at that time.
Well, we're talking about a movie, so we're just dropping reality in the. We're drop kicking reality and just going for the absurdly awesome of it.
Kind of like the movie version of Noah, where suddenly Russell Crowe was Noah. Like we're supposed to believe that.
For some reason, the Hindu ship has laser beams.
Yeah, it's just
why not?
What? Yeah.
But okay, that brings us to 8:30. It's about time that Amisha and I get going so that the Force can be with us.
Ho, ho, ho.
I will say this again next week, but because there are undoubtedly holidays that happen sooner, I want to say to everyone out there, in case you don't hear us next week or your holiday is sooner, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, joyous Kwanzaa, Merry Festivus for the rest of you.
Yes. Ramadan.
Happy Ramadan, happy Yuletide, happy winter solstice, happy New Year. And for any of the atheists that happen to be listening, let me give you the advice I give every year. Just convert already. You have to concede that we religious people have all the best holidays.
I would disagree with that. I think they've managed to take just about everything religious out of Christmas to the point where now it's a corporate holiday.
Yeah, but it's still originally a Christian.
Yes,
a Christian holiday. It is still, and I'm not saying Christian. I'm just saying theists in general, all religious people. The closest thing I've ever found to a uniquely atheist holiday, and this is actually based on an old joke, but it's been adopted by a number of atheists. You know what it is?
Festivus.
April Fool's Day.
Oh, well, that's good.
There's a verse in the Bible that says that he who says in their heart there is no God is a fool. So there's a completely untrue apocryphal legend of an atheist who was complaining in court to the judge that there are all these religious holidays that everybody got off work for, but there's no atheist holiday, and that's violation of separation of church and state. And the judge's response supposedly is, but there is an atheist holiday, because the Bible says this, your holiday is April Fool's Day. So apparently a bunch of atheists liked the joke and turned it into the atheist holiday.
Nice.
But regardless, happy holidays, everybody, and we'll see you next week. And may the Force be with you.
And with you.
Lift up your telekinetic powers.
The Catholic in me, every time I hear the May the Force be with you, wants to go, and also with you.
And also with you.
I've done that.
Well, in England, there is a church of the Force.